Who would have thought we are in October and we got some competitive football teams that came out of left field? And we'll start with the Giants first because they have the earlier game. Sweetie's going to have to get up early for that. I know he hates that.
I'll be hanging out somewhere with my brothers in Boston, so we'll be up anyway.
At 9:30 in the morning.
We'll be up at some hangout spot.
I'm up anyway. I have my son. I mentioned earlier I'll be at game 2, Mets-Padres. So depending on how late that game ends and what time I get home from that game really depends on the structure of the time of when the Mets and the Padres are finished. It will be a very long night.
The last time the Giants played in London, I was in college. It was 2016. It was a game against the Rams. This is before the Rams were good offensively, so it was a literal snooze fest trying to stay awake.
Was that the LA Rams?
It was their first year in LA. It was Jeff Fisher's last year with the Rams and Jared Goff's rookie year.
Oh, yeah, that was a fun time. Jeff Fisher was great. And the Jets were there last year where their season went down the toilet after they lost to Atlanta when everybody was picking them that week. But we'll begin with the Giants. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. First off, Landon Collins is back. Who would have thought that was going to happen? He'll help in some capacity in the safety position. I don't know how much he really has left. The thing about Collins is, to me, I always found Collins never to be like the greatest coverage safety guy. He was a very good tackler, good blitzer. Washington gave him that contract. People were like, what?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
It's like classic Dan Snyder overpaying defensive players.
That's what he does. Albert Hainsworth, no Kadarius Toney, didn't make the trip. No Kenny Galladay. I'm amazed Tyrod Taylor made the trip. I mean, the guy had a concussion. He's going on a plane ride to London. I don't know if that was the brightest thing to do in the NFL, but I don't know what to expect with the NFL anymore and what their thoughts are on concussion protocol symptoms. But Giants are 3-1 right now, beating a Tennessee team that's down. They've beaten a Carolina team that's not great. They've beaten Chicago, who is horrid to watch. Apparently, Justin Fields doesn't think his fans work hard enough to be saviors there. And they lost to a Cooper Rush-led Cowboys team at MetLife, or as I call it, the Big Tuna Fish Can, because that's essentially what it looks like. It's gross. I don't understand how you have that much money to invest in a stadium, and that's what you come up with. It's ridiculous. I drove past the Raiders Stadium in May during Memorial Day weekend. It was beautiful. And I go to MetLife Stadium, and I go, oh, this is garbage. Be it as it may, the Giants are 3-1. They're playing tough. Daniel Jones is coming in hobbling with the ankle. I'm wondering if Brian Daboll even remembers that he has an ankle injury because that press conference was weird the other day when he had to read it off a script. What are your initial thoughts on this Giant team so far being 3-1? Because to me, I think it's going to be very tough. They're not as good as the Eagles. Eagles to me are really looking like a contender this year. Jalen Hurts is taking that next stride. And Cowboys keep winning and Dak gets back. That's going to help them. Where are you with the Giants at this point?
Yeah, there's a lot of flaws with this Giants team still, and came into the season as a roster that was probably bottom 8 in the league. And the deficiencies are definitely being known now, especially with the wide receiver injuries. Sterling Shepard being out for the year. Wan'Dale Robinson hasn't been playing since the first game. Kadarius Toney hasn't played much of 2 snaps in the first game this year. The defense is really going to have to carry the load. You mentioned Landon Collins. Landon Collins, yes, not the greatest coverage guy. I think he's a better zone coverage, shorter coverage guy, but in man coverage, he's not very good at all. When James Betcher became the defensive coordinator in the Giants in 2018, you saw Landon Collins' weakness really get exposed there, and since then has not been the same. The pass rushers are a little healthier now, but still no Leonard Williams. Like you mentioned, what quarterback player are you going to get? You're going to get Tyrod Taylor traveling with a concussion. You got Daniel Jones already with a multitude of injuries so far. They've worked out Jake Fromm to be a third-string quarterback. Colt McCoy was the other one I think they were working out as well.
Play one snap and he'll get hurt.
Did play well with the Giants down the stretch in 2020 with that awful coaching stuff. And they're playing against a Packers team that has a very good defense, so that's going to be very hard. They've been a little down against the run from where they were last year, so if the Giants are going to win this game, it's going to be all on Saquon, but Saquon's been kind of inconsistent too after that big week 1 performance against the Titans, so not optimistic with the Giants. In terms of a long-term trajectory, yeah, the Eagles and Cowboys should still be thought of as favorites in that division. The Eagles are the best team, most complete team in the NFL right now. And Dallas is weathering the storm with that defense led by Micah Parsons. They've gotten DeMarcus Lawrence back to the form he was before he got his big contract. I don't know if I still trust him as a playoff team with the NFC West having a lot of talented teams, and I think the Packers and Vikings will both make it. So
something that's been talked about a lot. Say, for example, like a team like the Buffalo Bills who desperately need a running back. Call the Giants and say, we want Saquon Barkley. Do you make that trade? You can't sign the guy long-term because they're in a massive first year of this rebuild, and he's a running back.
I get that way of thinking because the Giants are still in that rebuild mode, and they have to get younger all at once. And being that Dave Gettleman strapped him with so many bad contracts, Kenny Galladay being the worst of them, being the highest paid wide receiver this year, and Leonard Williams, the Giants might not have that choice right now because, yeah, they're not a running back away from being a Super Bowl contender. Again, being how weak the NFC has been, they might squeak in, but what does that really mean? Oddly enough, like the Bills in 2017, had that surprise playoff appearance when they got the wild card at 9-7 because the Ravens
Was that the one when they lost to Houston?
They lost to Jacksonville. Buffalo wasn't supposed to make the playoffs that year. They were sticking with the rebuild process. It was McDermott and Bean's first year, and they still traded off some other veteran pieces.
That was Taylor as the quarterback that year.
Yep, Taylor was the quarterback. Josh Allen was drafted the next year. So that same regime, Joe Shane coming from the Bills, Brian Dable coming from the Bills, I expect the Giants to be able to do the same if the value is right. Now, if Saquon has down games or still more injury issues, maybe it's better to hang on, trying to get a fifth-year option, and then maybe trade him in that case or sign him if he plays better that year. But as of right now, yeah, I'm not ruling out the idea because we've seen teams try to overreact to rebuilding, and sometimes it doesn't work, a.k.a. Dave Gettleman.
I know Giant fans are excited, and they have every right to be excited. It's been a long time since they've seen a competitive team on the field between Joe Judge, Pat Shurmur, Ben McAdoo. Dave Gettleman really put this team in a hole. Joe Shane and Brian Dable are going to do this together. They're in this together. When you look at how the Giants are going to do this, they're going to follow that blueprint of we need to put guys around the quarterback, but at the same time, we need to draft the quarterback first, which is what Buffalo did. They drafted Josh Allen first. They had some pieces that worked, but then they traded for Stephon Diggs. Giant fans have to be patient. They're not getting a wild card seed this year. They may. I don't see it. At some point, the Rams are going to fix themselves out. 49ers, I think, will fix themselves too. They did last year. The Seahawks are in nothing. I don't care what Geno Smith is doing. Let's stop. I'm not running back. That's not nice.
Hey, still outplayed Russell Wilson this year so far.
That debauchery of a game. Embarrassing and abysmal. And as Tom Brady said earlier in the week, been a lot of bad football played this year so far. He's not wrong.
Including from his own offense.
To be fair, he does have a lot of injuries and guys retiring on him left and right. Plus, his entire offensive line is down.
People that weren't worried about the interior offense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, especially when Jensen got hurt, massive loss for them. But now we move on to the New York Jets, who I am never positive about the New York Jets. One of the most negative people towards them. I take the New York Jets. If they're great or they're good, it's a nice surprise. If they're bad, I say I told you so. So far, it seems to have worked out. They're 2-2. Their 2 wins came back 1. Their 2 losses, non-competitive. If Joe Flacco was the quarterback against Pittsburgh on Sunday, they lose 35-10. They're not scoring more than 10 points in that game. He doesn't move in the pocket. Zach Wilson made a lot of plays happen. Did he look good in the beginning? No, not really. But again, he didn't play all preseason in the first 3 weeks of the season. When you do that, you're basically throwing this kid into the fire because he hasn't played. No reps, nothing. He's got new receivers on his team from Usuma to Conklin, drafting Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. He had new offensive line mates, and then they went down. But it looks like Dwayne Brown's going to be back this week, which would be a huge thing for them. I like where the Jets are. I am still not completely sold on this coaching staff. I know Robert Saleh can be a really good defensive coach. The problem is he's not going to fire Jeff Ulbrich, because Jeff Ulbrich is one of his best friends. I wonder with LaFleur, can he open up the playbook a little bit more? And everybody always says, oh, somebody's going to poach him for their head coaching job. If somebody wants to poach a Jet coach for their head coaching position, that means something right is going on there. I think LaFleur will be good at some point. I think he needs more time with Zach. But Zach looked good in that fourth quarter. He looked poised. He looked competitive, energetic. I hated what Joe Flacco said after game 1 when he said it just felt like we had no energy in the huddle. And my response back was, dude, you're the quarterback. You're the one that's supposed to bring the energy in the huddle. That's your job. The fact that you said that dumb thing to even remotely speak of, saying that we don't have energy, was ridiculous. Nonsensical, and it was just a stupid comment that was put out there by Flacco when he says, ooh, we just didn't feel like we had any energy in the huddle. Bro, you're the quarterback. You're supposed to bring the energy. That's why Wilson said in the huddle before they scored the winning touchdown, let's go score a bleeping touchdown. That's bringing energy and being a leader. That's bringing your team together and saying, listen, boys, let's go get down there. Let's do this. We did it before. We got them on the ropes. Let's continue. The Jets still need help on defense. The safety help is travesty right now. Jordan Whitehead, I don't know if he's hurt or something's wrong. DJ Reed's been good. Amar Gardner's been fabulous. He was the guy I wanted at that 4th spot. I harped on it when Houston took
Stingley.
How's he doing this year, Stingley?
Pretty good, but not Gardner good.
When you look at it, he shut Jamar Chase down, even though they didn't win. He got Chase so angry that he tried to throw punches at him. Jermaine Johnson has been nice for them so far. I think that's another thing that Salah's got to start doing is these defensive constant rotations on the line. Keep what's out there. If it's working, don't ruin it. And, of course, Garrett Wilson's been fabulous. Breece Hall's been really good. His draft class definitely makes up for the disaster that happened in 2020, which was a complete debacle. In the last 2 years, he's done great with the draft. Sweetie, what are your thoughts on the Jets so far in their season, and how competitive do you think they can be?
You brought up a good point with the assistant coaching staff. I think the stubbornness of certain defensive position groups have been very big for both Mike LaFleur and for Jeff Ulbrich so far. Starting with the defense, you mentioned the rotation of that defensive line, maybe a big reason why that they have not been able to get a high pressure rate this year. Jermaine Johnson's improving. You got Bryce Huff, you got Mark Clemens that are all just in and out. The interior really has underwhelmed, and a lot of that has to do with not getting those consistent reps too.
You're coming in for one play, and then you're out for the next 2 plays.
Now, the one thing it has helped is their run defense from last year. Last year, the run defense was awful. This year has been actually pretty good against the Ravens in week 1.
Quentin Williams has been a stud.
Najee Harris not playing 100%, understandable, but still, from where the Jets' run defense was last year, you have to consider that a massive improvement. The Browns are the only team that's been able to run on them pretty consistently so far, and all the AFC North teams have all good rushing attacks. LaFleur, sometimes he is still too stubborn with his scheme. I don't think there's a lot of adjustments at times, but he did do much better this week play calling with Zach Wilson.
I like that he got Elijah Moore involved.
Yes, but I think Zach Wilson really created more for Elijah Moore, where you talk about the yards after the catch, you're talking about that motion, and you're talking about the versatility that Elijah Moore has brought. And you saw that big difference with Zach Wilson in comparison to Joe Flacco, who barely used him at all. And he was able to get Corey Davis involved too.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
That came out of left field. Conklin actually hung onto the ball this week. I'm still waiting for Usuma to catch a ball. He hasn't even caught one yet. It's been 4 weeks already.
Yeah, it's interesting because LaFleur is a direct derivative of the Kyle Shanahan offense, which uses the tight ends more, but he also comes from his brother's way of thinking, also the Sean McVay way of thinking that spread out a lot of the 3 receiver sets. So it's a little bit of a fusion of both so far, and he's tending to use the wide receivers more. So we'll see if they get the tight ends going later on in the season. You're right. Conklin had pretty strong games.
Their running attack is great, though,
Yeah.
with Carter and Hall. That's set for the next X amount of years with those two. But
Again,
that's my point with the Barkley thing. They got Carter in the 3rd round, Speedy, and they got Hall in the 2nd round.
Right, 2 running backs now.
Exactly. You could get a running back in any round you want. If somebody offers them for Barkley, I'd do it.
The Patriots and the Saints, those 2 teams were ahead of the curve for a while. Now everybody's starting to do it, where they're going for these running back platoons. And that's why a lot of these feature backs aren't getting same level of both money and contract-wise now, too. And you're seeing it with a lot of these guys getting hurt right after they get paid. Christian McCaffrey, 3 years in a row now. Derrick Henry last year after he got paid. So, yeah, maybe the Giants do have to keep that in mind. But going back to the Jets, Zach Wilson definitely was doing a great job extending plays. And you saw his confidence level, too, to make a lot of tight throws, sophisticated throws against a Steelers secondary that, granted, isn't great. But, again, it's still coached by Mike Tomlin. Brian Flores is on that defensive staff. So they still have a lot of influence coaching on that. Him coming back in those conditions, very impressive.